thank you for joining the Center for Financial Security and the Wisconsin Coalition on Student Debt for our webinar today. Student loan debt issues for veterans. What do we know about the challenges and barriers? My name is Hallie Leinhart, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Center for Financial Security here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We have a great and timely event lined up for everyone today, and I'd like to wish everyone a happy Veterans Day, one day late. This webinar will be an hour long today, so ending at 1 p.m. Central Time. Just to give a bit of a rundown on our event today, we will begin with an overview, and we'll have some background on the issues of veterans and student loan debt. Next, we'll have a panelist discussion with facilitated questions followed by audience Q&A. So please, audience members, please do feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar in the Q&A box located on the side of your screen, on the right-hand side of your screen. And finally, we'll end with a presentation on some resources and tools for veterans to access around student loans. We have a great lineup of presenters today for today's webinar. We have Carol Trone, she's the co-director of Fair Opportunity Project. We have Joe Rasmussen, Veteran Service Coordinator with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Larry Graves, Education Consultant with Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. Bradley Burt, an American Legion Dane County Service Officer and a student veteran. Patty Taylor, Senior Director of Financial Aid and Educational Funding at Lakeland University, and Cheryl Rapp. She's a College Affordability Specialist with the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions. And with that, we will go ahead and get started, and I will turn it over to Carol Trone to provide us with some background and data. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Hallie. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for sharing your lunch hour with us today. So as you've heard, my name is Carol Trone, and I'm a board member with the Wisconsin Coalition on Student Debt, along with Coalition co-founders John Wedge and Laura Sutherland. I want to acknowledge with gratitude before we get going here, the Wisconsin Department of Veteran Affairs help in promoting this event and participating in our panel today. And a special thanks to Coalition member Hallie Leinhart with the Center for Financial Security at the University of Wisconsin for her skilled facilitation and coordination of today's event. So the Coalition is a nonprofit organization that seeks to raise awareness of policy insights and promote outreach that improves the borrowing and repayment experience for Wisconsin residents. So you can see on that slide there our mission statement, our vision, our website, and how you can get in touch with us through our email. Hallie, can you forward? Thanks. So the partners on the Coalition include nonprofit organizations, financial institutions, higher education, public and private sector representatives, and we're all striving to improve the process for students before, during, and after their post-secondary educational experience. So you can see a full listing of those partners on our website, which is debtsmarts.org. And our website also has information on with resources and upcoming events. Beginning this year, the Coalition launched this convening series to bring a spotlight to how different populations are impacted by student loan debt. In earlier convenings, for example, we have focused on the pandemic's impact on borrowers, and in another convening on racial disparities in borrowing and repayment. Next slide. So today, in recognition of Veterans Day, which was commemorated yesterday, we'll focus on the trends and challenges we see among some of the more than 650,000 student veterans across the country who are using military benefits to pursue higher education. In particular, our panelists will be helping us understand how this plays out in Wisconsin. So our coalition, as I mentioned, it includes members who work with students and borrowers before, during, and after the post-secondary education experience. And so we know that the best approach includes those approaches that are preventative, that are informative ahead of time. How do we ensure that students are most informed and best equipped to handle their loan debt at the start of the process? So what you'll hear in our panel today is a range of experiences. and perspectives on the student veteran experience before, during, and after that experience. I want to set the stage very briefly with a snapshot of the student veteran profile in the U.S. And then, as I mentioned, our panelists will zoom in on the Wisconsin perspective. And I just have to add on a personal note, today's topic has particular meaning for me as a daughter of a career Navy officer who was among the earliest to benefit from the GI Bill. And with it, he was able to complete his dream education. So I think about my father today, and I thank you know, everyone on our call today who's joining us, who has served our country. Next slide, please. Okay, so demographics, and all of us on the call today will be receiving these slides afterwards. So I just want to set the stage very quickly here. What we know is that mostly student veterans are older than what we call the so-called traditional college age. Far fewer are what would be that 18 to 20-year-old range. Nearly half of these student veterans are parents or married. So they have those added responsibilities and identities. They're mostly male. They're mostly white, although if you look at the percentages, you can see that, again, just as with the armed forces, there's quite a bit of diversity. And significantly, I think, for our issue around student loan debt, they are mostly first generation. So 62% of student veterans, first generation, and that compares to just about 35% of the non-veteran student population. That said, with that profile, they are on average fairly successful, as successful as non-veteran students in completing their education. Next slide, please. So this particular slide could take all of our time and then some. The benefits are complex. I will not pretend to go into them. I will just very quickly state that, so what we call the GI Bill has a more formal name, Servicemen's Readjustment Act. As I mentioned before, in 2018, the number we have is 650,000 veterans across the US have utilized these benefits. But significantly, and I think our panelists will go into this, the benefits vary according to how much time you've served, when you perform that service, the kind of military service. So there are a lot of variations in that. And those variations not only affect how much of a benefit you receive, but complicate the understanding of those benefits. Next slide, please. So why do student veterans borrow? So the GI Bill does provide generous benefits, and yet we know that the number of veterans who take out student loans is increasing, and that they're borrowing larger amounts of money. So again, this is a parallel we see also with non-student veterans. So our panelists will shed further insights into why they believe this borrowing occurs. You can see on the screen just a couple of broadly stated reasons why that can be happening. And so, they may not qualify. There are differences between pre and post 9/11 benefits. Benefits often don't cover all the living expenses. There are things that can trip student veterans up, like whether their part-time status, how long it's taking them to complete their degree, and so forth. Next slide, please. And we also know that at least some of the borrowing and the challenges that come in managing the borrowing come through just the complexity of how you can access the information, how you navigate the process, who do you go to get the information, how do you know how to understand a financial aid award letter, what does it mean when you get all your payments up front, and how can you appropriately budget? And then there's, other issues around how you can navigate the private loan, reductions and repayment requirements. Next slide, please. So on this slide, as we can see, systemic challenges that are listed here are not necessarily unique to student veterans. So you can see that, if you are that non-traditional age, if you are taking a longer than average amount of time to complete it. For-profit institutions are creating a big red flag for a lot of students and student veterans. Issues of predatory lending, and really just understanding that whole maze that can be complicated for anyone in the post-secondary space. So understanding what accreditation means, what that means for your ability to qualify for a job or a career after your degree. Do your credits transfer appropriately if you are moving from one institution to another? So these are all very real challenges that I think our panelists will also be able to address, but significantly they are layered onto the additional challenges of the profile of a student veteran. And so on our next slide. And so if you took those systemic challenges that you just saw and you overlay those with these challenges that really do hit student veterans very profoundly. So, you know, the college campus experience is really set up assuming that a student is a full-time student and can immerse themselves in the life of the campus. And yet we know that that's very difficult for veteran students to do. And so as a result, they may not engage and feel like they are truly a part of that campus. And so that connection can be really, really difficult and really affect a student veteran's ability to engage and be successful. We also have heard reports that, you know, a campus setting is a very different setting. So this is not a military setup. A university environment has different challenges. It's set up differently. Students need to advocate for themselves differently. Another example from the source I looked at just talked about, you know, mobility. I mean, I know in my own family, thankfully we didn't move too much, but we did move 4 times. So mobility is a reality of life and can affect not only, of course, personal experiences, family experiences, but the educational experience. And then, you know, service obligations and then mental health challenges. So we know that there are some very important needs, very big challenges that that veterans face and student veterans as well. And as we know with all kinds of students, those mental health challenges are very real and can be very formidable barriers to success. So with that overview, which I ran through very quickly, but I want to make sure we have time to hear from the panelists. So I'd like to hand this over to Hallie for our facilitated discussion.
Very good. Thanks so much, Carol, for all of that information and for kind of setting the stage for us, as you said. I'm going to attempt right now to stop sharing my screen so that everybody can just see the panelists. And I believe that should take effect for everybody. But in the meantime, I am going to say that we do have Joe Rasmussen, Larry Graves, Bradley Burt, and Patty Taylor here with us. And I would like to begin the discussion just asking our panelists to each provide your organization, your title, but then a little bit briefly on kind of how you are in this space and what exactly you do with your time in this space. And I'm going to have Patty start, then Joe, and then Larry, and we'll end with Bert.
Hello, I'm Patty Taylor. I'm the Senior Director of Financial Aid at Lakeland University, which is located near Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I have been in my director role for 15 years. I've been in financial aid for over 30 years. And I oversee the veteran services in our department. And I also have a son that has completed 6 years of service with the military and has used the benefit to continue his schooling as well. So I I like to think I'm a little bit understanding it from a student perspective, what they need to navigate and understand when using their benefits, as well as from an administrative perspective, what we do in our office to help serve the students and help them navigate the benefits as well.
Good afternoon. My name's Joe Rasmussen. I'm the Veteran Services Coordinator at UW-Madison. I've been in this role for 8 years, and prior to this, I'm also a former student veteran at 2 different schools. So I bring to my work not only the university's perspective, but I also, I share a lot of the experiences that our non-traditional veteran population bring to UW-Madison and into higher ed. And I'd also like to point out and highlight another group of student service members that are providing a great service to our state right now, and that's the National Guard students. And so for those of us who are in higher ed and supporting those students, you may know this semester and this year in particular, the burden is even greater, and the repercussions and what the outcomes could be are certainly an important piece of this conversation as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Larry Graves, and I'm an education consultant with the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. In my role, and you saw this in one of Carol's slides, I'm with the state approving agency. Our agency approves educational and training opportunities for the GI Bill, so federal benefit, but the programs that are eligible are approved at the state level. So there's my colleagues are across the nation. We have oversight. Again, we have oversight, but we also do compliance. So we'll do random sampling of approved facilities and just ensure that the taxpayers' funds are well spent. Prior to this, joining the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs, I spent 16 years in public higher education. Like Joe, I'm also was a former school certifying official and Air Force veteran, so I've utilized Chapter 30 benefits to fund my education a long time ago.
My name is Bradley Burt. Can you hear me? My name is Bradley Burt. I'm a service officer with the Dane County American Legion. I'm also with Post 501 in Madison, Wisconsin. I walk the beat between the state capitol to the Madison VA to help police up some of the homeless veterans that are downtown to get them back into college through the Wisconsin GI Bill. Throughout the course of my time spent doing this project from 2018 to the present, I uncovered that there was an individual downtown who was a prisoner of war attending UW-Madison who was being left unattended. So my job really is to get out there and help others who are unaware of what's available to them find these resources, connect them with the county service officer, and also work with individuals at the university and at Madison College where help them find these benefits. I'm also a student in the classroom using the Wisconsin GI Bill. The Wisconsin GI Bill saved my life. I'm a Veterans Crisis Line survivor, and after completing the Madison College 14-week cognitive processing therapy, I was able to take advantage of a program called the Veterans Integration Transitional Academic Leadership Program that helped me transition from Madison College to UW-Whitelaw. I'm currently a consortium student, international journalism major, corporate communications minor, and I'm also pursuing the corporate social responsibility certificate to help all of you out there who may be struggling find those employee assistance programs through social media and print campaigns.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for being here today. This is truly an extraordinary group that we've gathered for this panel. So I do want to just jump right into the first question. And I'm going to direct this first to Joe, then Larry, then Bert, and then Patty. We'll go in that order. Feel free to take a couple minutes to answer the question if you like, or feel free to pass it if you feel like it doesn't resonate with you as much. So from your perspective, what do you see as the largest challenge or the largest challenges for military service people and veterans as it relates to education financing and student loans? And as I mentioned, Joe, please feel free to go first, then Larry, then Bert, then Patty.
Thank you. So I like to frame it in the context of what this population has in common with one another and what's uncommon with our traditional students, so our non-veterans on campus. So I think the overarching answer is the challenge of adapting to higher ed as a landscape in general. But if you think about it in the context of this population mainly being, a first generation college student, without applying and going through the process without the assistance of a guidance counselor or a parent who has gone through higher ed themselves, and then putting on top of it the complexities of accessing not only the GI Bill and going through that process, but financial aid and learning how all of those things come together. And oftentimes, because of those, then not getting timely information around how to navigate the process. I see in my work, oftentimes students are enrolled in attending classes and still trying to figure out, for example, how to apply for the GI Bill. And so if they're already that far behind, it adds a burden, and it just continues to create problems for the students.
So this summer I had or actually earlier this year, I had the privilege of representing the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs on the governor's task force on student debt. And what we heard is a number of student testimonials. We heard researchers, a number of presentations that sometimes it felt like a graduate seminar course because of the amount of material that we were reviewing. But it really, what the outcome of that, and what I learned is really it is tough, and regardless if you're a traditional student, non-traditional veteran student, I mean, regardless of your background, it's just complicated. And as Joe was talking about, what he's seeing now, navigating, I mean, those are the same issues that have been around for years. 20 years ago when I was a school certifying official, those same issues of navigating the complexities of federal aid, GI Bill benefits, how to get that started, and finding the right point of contact, right person to talk to on campus. We're still seeing those, and so that remains the challenge moving forward.
The toughest challenge that I'm seeing from my perspective as a service officer is knowing where these resources are. And very simply, one of the resources I've been able to hand out is a program called 1-877-48-VET. And what this does is it helps a homeless veteran begin the process of getting into school. Once we can get them into the HUD-VASH programs and we can start getting them into educational programs, then those challenges start to fade away. But the hardest part for me was knowing where to find the Wisconsin GI Bill, how to access these programs, and very simply just to send them to the county service officer. So those are some of the big challenges I see people face, is just knowing where their lines of sight consist.
On the financial aid side, the one thing that we think is one of the most important things is to get connected to the person who does certifying of the benefits, because sometimes that might lie in the financial aid office, sometimes it might lie in the registrar's office. or maybe even in the Veteran Service Office on a campus. But oftentimes that's really the most important thing to do, so that you can figure out if you need to complete the FAFSA for yourself, if you need to, if you have your benefit statement so you know what you're eligible for. Can we help you navigate to get that? We at Lakeland, we like to think it's most important that you start the semester knowing what your financial obligation is. We think it's important to be pre-planning and being prepared financially going in. That's just one less thing to worry about as you navigate and adapt to your academic and your different structure than what you had in the military.
Thank you, everyone. Let's move to another question that is a good segue from all of the answers you provided. So recognizing the importance to education financing of access to reliable information, what do you think some of the best resources are for veterans in Wisconsin? And let's begin with Larry and then go to Bradley, Bradley, I'm sorry that I fumbled your name previously, and then move to Patty and then Joe.
Yeah, so I would echo what Patty said earlier. If the student can be directed to a school certifying official, right, whether it's at a college, university, or a training school, that's an excellent starting point for the eligible person. Start there, and I know it's a tough job. Patty can certainly talk about and Joe can talk about the multiple hats that they wear sometimes on a campus. But it's really, I feel, if it's a great point of contact, and it's one where if the relationship is started right away, as Patty said, that there's this trust, that there's this point of contact, I think then you'll really see the success and the retention of that student on your campus. And I think that's a great starting point.
After exercising the Wisconsin GI Bill, I found that attending Madison College first before transferring to the university allowed me to access to the Center for Entrepreneurship. That's where I found wisvets.org. There's all kinds of licensure waivers. There's many programs out there in the state that allow veterans outside opportunities besides education to maximize their ability to what I call hustle in school, where you can do work studies and things like that. So to sustain and be more reliable, the wisvets.org website has helped me tremendously. Also, as a service officer, Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs always has a great outlet. After interviewing Donald Placidi for a class project for the Royal Purple, I found out that there is just so many opportunities with this 427-page manual for service officers that starting out at the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs is always the right approach.
I think one of the most important things is for service people to understand the GI Bill is to really start talking and learning what's all included, because we have worked with a number of students that have had the opportunity to actually transfer their benefits as well. So I think it's really important that service people understand that benefit and how and what's all available to them. And that often starts in the VA office, but we can also help them work through that process as well, and help them determine what is the best course. Because the other thing we have to keep in mind is the veteran benefit can be different at different schools. So for example, some schools sign up for yellow ribbon, some schools do not. So it's really important that we be forthright with the students as well, to let them know how their benefit, how much of their benefit and how their benefit would support their tuition payments at the universities or at the training schools.
I would definitely echo Patty in that the benefits are even unique at each individual school. Different types of benefits can be used at different types of schools. And also there's a relationship with financial aid where, even though you may be eligible as a service member for a certain benefit, it might not make sense to use that benefit depending on the financial aid package that institution can offer. So once a student is more or less certain or is exploring a certain type of education, I think that institution is going to be the most important relationship they can develop. And then the other part, not only where, but when, and I made a comment about this earlier, but in-time information is super important. The students, again, as Patty mentioned, should know what their financial outlook is going to be as far as coverage well before the semester starts. In fact, I would encourage conversations to take place during the application process so that we can talk to students about what not just the next couple months look like, but perhaps what the next few years could look like.
Thanks, everyone. So one of the things that we have heard about is veterans' increased reliance on private borrowing. So given the resources that you've just described, can you speak to why veterans are increasingly turning to private loans in your experience? And let's begin with Bradley, then Patty, Joe, and Larry.
I was the general manager of broadcast for the Clarion at Madison College. I had a chance to interview several veterans for my radio show. It was called Outpost 422. And what it was it let them speak about times of crisis. And one of the things that I saw was that in an event where an individual gets an F in a class, the VA takes that money back and puts that person in a financial constraint. Where I've heard this in my interviews has had a lasting effect on these individuals to have to reach out for private sources to cover their offset when they've experienced this circumstance.
Fortunately, we have not had a lot of veterans that needed to seek private assistance through loans. However, in general sessions that I have participated in and attended as a whole with financial aid, the one thing that we learn is sometimes their housing stipends aren't enough to help cover and support their costs of living. And then if they don't have enough federal eligibility, because they might be later on in their academic program already, they might be turning to some of these loans. But I want people to know that financial aid offices have tools to help students navigate the different private loans so that we can at least support and help them figure out which one might be the best one for them. So I really, and also we may even be able to have another opportunity to suggest to them that might eliminate the need for a private loan. But I just think it's, again, getting connected with the financial aid office and learning and more about the loans and what might be the best alternative for them.
Yeah, I certainly agree. There's that need to have that relationship with financial aid to understand what's all available. You know, it's easy to find a loan, and it can be more difficult to set up multiple appointments and speak with an individual on campus who perhaps has that information that might even be more helpful. You know, but this population isn't, you know, school isn't always their number one priority. Sometimes it's number 2 or 3 or 4, right? We are talking about, as was mentioned with the demographics, an older population, a population who has identity such as spouse or parent or homeowner. So the needs of borrowing in this area can be different. It might not necessarily be going to the exact same things as their traditional age students.
And you know, one of the more recent ways that the institutions have tried to tackle this and help students is by providing, you know, if a student's car breaks down and they need some help, right, rather than seeing the student leave, withdraw from school. Oftentimes there's funding available for you know, $500 grant to help out a student so they can stay enrolled and so they don't have to drop out of school. or if something comes up an emergency with a family member, that they can tap into these emergency funds that these institutions have set aside. I think that's one of the great things that, and one of the many unknowns, right, at many institutions, because fortunately you don't know until you need it. And as much as you know, the schools try to provide, you know, kind of broadcast this message out, I think sometimes it's lost. You know, the other thing is it's GI Bill is 36 months, and we often see students. Because of changing majors or changing schools, sometimes the benefit can lapse at the very last semester, or sometimes there's other factors that you know, they didn't quite finish the degree that they wanted, so they're looking to other sources. So that's something to also, you know, again, there is this 36 months window for the GI Bill, and you know, like the others have stated, you know, kind of this planning and navigating the waters, doing that early, setting that plan, certainly helps in the success at the end.
So this might be, I'm not sure if any of you have actual data on this question, but it might just be anecdotal. But to what extent do you think, or in your experience, have you found that veterans in Wisconsin are being targeted by or are victims of deceptive practices as related to student loans and higher education? And let's begin with Patty, followed by Joe, then Larry, then Bradley.
I guess I'm really excited, I think, to be able to say that in Wisconsin. I don't think we have a lot of deceptive practices, especially amongst the universities that are accredited to provide education here. However, I think there's some perceptions out there, or some opportunities that students, you know, and I'm going to talk all students, even in addition to the veterans, that sometimes don't understand is on their financial aid award, it might say federal Stafford subsidized loan. And some schools will say, you know, if we don't hear from you in 15 days, your loan will automatically be accepted. So there are times when there might be borrowing occurring that wouldn't be necessary. So I just think it's real important that students, veterans, learn to not be afraid to ask a question if they don't understand something on their financial aid. Or, you know, we've had the question asked to us, does a loan mean I have to pay it back? And you know what, that's a great question. Many of us, because of the industry we work in, that's an obvious answer, but to many, it's not an obvious answer. We need to help them understand, you know, what's a loan and what isn't a loan. So I think I'm not aware of any real strong deceptive practices. I've heard of them across other states. But I think we're fortunate that we don't have to worry about that so much in Wisconsin at the moment.
I certainly could have used Patty's advice when I was a student veteran, because I sure as heck did not understand my financial aid package as well as I probably should have. You know, and part of that, I didn't ask the question, and perhaps I was prideful, right? I was a 23-year-old Marine. I'd been independent, you know, since I graduated and left the state, you know, and to come back and admit that I didn't fully understand that, you know, it'd have been a difficult thing for me to do. The other point, though, I want to bring up is that, especially in 2020, our students aren't attending classes at an institution that's within the borders of the state of Wisconsin, right? We are all online, as we are on a webinar right now, and our students are taking online courses as well. And the targeting and the ads that I see personally on my social media, because I've identified myself as a veteran, you know, they're there. They pop up quite often. I get many emails. So I don't know exactly what's happening within the state, but it sure exists to students who live in the state.
In Wisconsin, you know, we have the Educational Approval Program. It's a small group that this is their task, is oversight and compliance for these for-profit institutions, for-profit schools, training facilities within the state. A great group of people that are very dedicated to ensuring that these type of practices and you know what they're bringing, what these facilities are bringing forth is a quality program. But again, to Joe's point, they really can only do what's they only have oversight of what's headquartered here in the state. Like you said, you know, with online education, things are just a blur. And so I think that would be one of the first things. And when we heard that over the summer during the governor's task force was, you know, we can certainly protect our own within the border, but when things are headquartered in Minneapolis or they're headquartered in DC or other places in the nation or across the world, we have very little that we can do. I will tell you, in the 3 years that I've been with the state approving agency, I have visited a number of these training institutions, facilities across the state. You know, I think veterans have the ones that are approved for a GI Bill. There's great places, public, private, and I think that's really goes to about what we have here, the oversight that we have here, and you know what the residents want. They want a quality experience, and that's the expectation.
The only caveat I've learned through corporate social responsibility is just knowing where your data goes when you're writing your research papers, knowing where that submission's ending up and who's collecting your data and who's selling and transmitting your data. That's about the only thing I can see.
Okay, so then a question, actually, I'm gonna pose a question that came in from the audience before I go to our last facilitated question, and that was just going back to another question around your experience with working with military service people. To what extent do you think that military service people and veterans really do fully understand the GI Bill and other benefits and how best to access them? This person mentioned that they felt that there was a lot of misinformation around those resources and that bill. And let's go ahead and start with Joe, Larry, Bradley, and then Patty.
So misinformation is certainly a big piece of why folks don't fully understand the GI Bill. I think it starts with where you learn about what the GI Bill is, and even if we go back and earlier was stated, you know, GI Bill isn't just GI Bill. There's many different flavors of it. There's not a uniform, perfect training that every person gets when they separate from the military or when they're getting ready to use their GI Bill. Some students get really great information, and some folks don't get as good of information. So I think a big role of a veteran service office is right now with new students is that early consultation around benefits, and then establishing a relationship with the students so that there's continued consultation as students come back from deployment or when parents have children who become of age to attend school themselves. The picture adjusts with that. So it's at the beginning, and then it's also this continued relationship, which can be difficult depending on, you know, how busy the students are and how busy or how accessible a veteran service office at an institution is.
And to Joe's point, you know, the Department of Defense budget's this massive monster, but you know, the money that's allocated to transition is just a small sliver. And you know, but to their point, I mean, they're there to fight wars and not ensure a smooth, you know, a transition back to civilian life. that's kind of the struggle, right? Is that in all the branches, and we see this, you know, different programming and opportunities available. But then, and then you take that to the next level of National Guard student, reserve students who have multiple deployments, and as their federal service is stacking, you know, their percentage of eligibility for that post 9/11 GI Bill changes as well. And so there's lots of complexities to it. You know, one of the things though that I find, and I was talking with my colleague yesterday, was, you know, these same challenges that we see with the GI Bill are also the same challenges that we see with financial aid, right? And navigating those waters. So there's so many commonalities here, and we were talking about this yesterday. So how do we do that? What's the, you know, what is the magic solution to this? I think we have many professionals out there that are studying federal aid, and we have people that are studying the GI Bill. How do we get this moved in the right direction? And I think, you know, through conversations like this, maybe we can get there someday, but that's the challenge.
Speaking from my own personal experience, the extent of knowledge that I had coming into this, I was under the impression with both rehab, after I applied for over 20 times, my consultant said that if I got into UW-Madison, I would be in the program. And through a backdoor segue at Madison College, I was able to at least attempt to get into UW-Madison, but I still got denied anyway. So what I've learned is, as an ambassador through our veteran organizations, we collect data and we distribute it freely. And by working with individuals like us in these organizations, we can help you navigate before you go see a service officer, to make sure that you are at least aware of the starting process and where the starting line begins. Realistically, all we can do in these organizations is open the door for you, but the responsibility does fall on the WDDA and the county service office. So please don't go into this with an impression that we have all the answers, because we don't. We leave that on our department commanders and our national commanders to relay that and represent us. However, we do have some firsthand experience, and if you would like to, after this, just reach out to me and I can share.
I don't know if I feel qualified to answer this. I think Larry and Joe probably have had more opportunity to speak with our various veterans. I do know, though, that in our office, we are very connected with our veterans for that reason, because they need some help and support navigating and learning what exactly everything is that they're eligible for and how it might be covered. And we're very thankful and fortunate we can provide that. But I do think it's like any federal program, if it's financial aid, if it's the food share programs, if it's the GI benefits, I think there's always a lot of room for us to try to create and support different policies that might make some more, create simplicities, efficiencies, and make it simpler for the common everyday person to understand. And I think the GI Bill could probably use a little bit of that, as well as some of the financial aid programs. So anything we can do between financial aid and the veteran services to try to help make it simpler, you know, would be great. But I do think there's a number of misunderstandings, misinterpretations, and lack of understandings just because of the complexity of it.
Okay, I'm going to pose one final question before I see if there's just a couple audience questions that we can take. But this one I will pose to all of you, and I think I've scrambled the order of operations with our panelists, so bear with me. But are there any changes to practice or policy that you think would positively impact veterans as they look to finance their education? Let's begin with Patty, then Joe, Larry, and finally let's end with Bradley. And then, like I said, we'll see if there's a little bit of time for some audience questions.
This is a tough one for me. I spend way too much time with compliance and policy. And like I said earlier, I really do believe that there is some opportunity for us to do it. I just think it's such a massive program to tackle that it's, you know, it's a little difficult to always put our head around it. I think the one thing we do need to find a way to do, though, as we watch education change during this pandemic, is to really think about how we deliver education. And is there a way for us to treat those who take online courses somewhat equally when it comes to housing stipends and things like that? Because I do believe that that's going to be a wave of the future as to, you know, more and more students doing more and more classes online. So that is one thing I think we need to figure out. But I think a lot of it is just trying to find some simplicity so that people, our veterans, can understand it easier.
I think practice from a higher ed perspective is earlier communication with our applicants. You know, when you separate from the military, even though you have eligible service to qualify for the most popular GI Bill, which is right now the post 9/11 GI Bill, you're not eligible. You have to apply, and that's a piece of information that I have and that we have at the institution that a lot of our applicants and admitted students don't necessarily know. So as a practice, earlier communication and establishing a relationship. Policy-wise, I think that there's things at the federal level that certainly need to be looked at, such as why isn't somebody who has the eligible service just already awarded the post 9/11 GI Bill when they separate from the military? On a state level, I think that there's some look at some of our state GI Bill benefits and military benefits that do things that perhaps create debt, such as a reimbursement program that requires students to finance their tuition and then with a loan and then pay back that loan after they get their reimbursement, or you know, others. I can think of a couple other state requirements. And then on campus, again, I think between practice or policy, whichever big P or little p we're looking at, it is the smoothing of operations between our departments so that it's as simple as Patty said, as simple as we can make it.
So for me, it's a lot about if you talk to folks in VA education, they will share with you, you know, the antiquated systems that they operate on, the DOS databases and other things, and these are the things that my colleagues and I we always lament about. Is like, oh, we're stepping back in the time when we log into these systems to see veteran student data. And you know, well, and a lot of that is just because of the VA's focus on healthcare, right? And veteran healthcare is a very important topic in this nation, and ones that makes the headlines, you know, almost weekly. But it is time. It's time that you know, the systems that they use are up to speed with what Patty and Joe are using in terms of their student information systems. And get up to speed so that they can do better data sharing with the Department of Education, and perhaps tag on to some of the reporting that that Patty has to do, you know, for federal aid, some of the reporting that the registrars have to do for enrollment. You know, Joe's, you know, these are things that have been talked about for years, and some that, you know, he's been part of in a work group for a professional organization that he belongs to. But these are the things that we can, you know, we can talk about how to do it better, but unfortunately, the systems that the VA has, it's just not there. And I know that's not a popular topic when it comes to budgeting, and it's not it doesn't make the nice headlines. But you know, my colleagues across the nation, that would be the first thing. You know, it's like let's help them get their systems up to speed, and then we will do the good work, because then they will have the opportunity to you know, process you know, these requests faster, process the applications faster, and it's just going to work. But the base needs to be there first.
With my experience at Madison College and then transferring to UW-Whitewater and also being a consortium intern, work study is where I began to see how the college dynamic plays out, how all of our departments connect together. But it also helped me supply a little bit of extra income for my family. Doing every extra credit project will help impact you as a veteran. One of the things that was presented to me at SOAR at Whitewater was that we expect more out of you as an adult student. We expect more out of you to lead the way. So every time a professor says, well, it's optional for you to do the extra credit, no, it's not. I see it as a learning experience. And for me to be impacted as a veteran, I want to maximize the amount of money that you're all investing in with the Wisconsin GI Bill, and to impress upon my professors, who are what I call my clients, so that when I become a professional, that I'm leaving that lasting impression in the institution through the work studies, like when I was general manager of broadcast, and showing the university how we as veterans network and we create and cultivate a holistic experience in college. So please reach out to the veterans on campus if you're currently enrolled, those who represent the school, and see what work studies are available. And if not, you can always volunteer in the community. There's several outsources out there. Volunteering in the community also impacted me as a veteran to find resources for research. Undergraduate research at UW-Whitewater is another experience. When we start contributing ourselves and stop looking at it from a financial investment and looking at it more as an investment in humanity, we start to show the world how veterans and the investment that we are impact America.
Thanks all for that, those incredible insights. I think that those were all really helpful and comprehensive in their approach to this topic. I'm going to, actually, there's a question that came in that I'll pose to Joe Rasmussen to begin with. And if one of the other panelists is interested in commenting, please too. But this is a very timely question, and Joe, I think you kind of alluded to this earlier. How are veterans being impacted by increasing number of online programs and classes? This person has seen that vets come in and they say that they can't access their full benefits unless they have face-to-face classes. Is this something that you have also encountered? Joe, please go first and then pass along if you'd like.
Yeah, this was a hot topic earlier this year, especially when COVID-19 forced our campuses to switch modality to from face-to-face to online. So at issue is the monthly living stipend that the VA pays to students. It's attached to the post 9/11 GI Bill. And that program pays students an amount based on the location of the institution. So here in Madison, Wisconsin, the cost of living is higher than it is in, say, Platteville, Wisconsin. So the stipend's higher. If you're taking all online classes, the stipend is reduced to 50% of the federal rate. Here at Madison, that's roughly a $800 cut per month. So students need to take one in-person class to be considered at least full for the monthly stipend. Congress passed a law earlier this year and then extended it again through the end of 2021, which allows students who are in courses that were converted due to COVID-19 to receive that full housing rate, that living stipend, even if their classes are all online. But it, as high, I think in a bigger general sense, though, as higher ed moves to more online modality, the need for these students, if they want to use the GI Bill and get that higher rate, they're going to have to find some sort of in-person class. So there's the specific unique need that we have right now with COVID-19, which was fixed by Congress, but then there's, what is higher ed going to look like in the future?
May I comment on that as well? I agree 100% with what Joe was saying, but I guess I want to add to, if there's any student veterans on this call, or if you're doing any advising to them, to also ask questions. What are schools doing to accommodate veterans that may be seeking mainly online potentially, or are seeking that opportunity to have in-seat capacity so they can get the housing stipend. Because I know one thing we do is we're small enough that we can look at our rosters and see who our veterans are and decide, you know what, these are classes we need to switch and turn them into a hybrid where they can actually come sit in the class. First of all, so at least they can qualify for their benefit. But I think students and other agencies that are supporting these students need to find out what schools might provide some flexibility and support to students that might be taking a majority online, but yet need to find that in-seat opportunity.
Very good. Thanks so much for those comments. And unfortunately, we're running short on time. I do want to go ahead and get to the resources section. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Cheryl Rapp from DFI, who's going to present on a few resources for veterans.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying on. I know we're going a little bit long, so I thank you for those that are able to stay a little bit longer. What I'm going to show you are some resources that's out there that's from reputable websites and from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and everything. All of the resources on the next couple of slides, we also have posted on the Wisconsin Coalition website. So that website is debtsmarts.org. So if you get a chance, to see, go to that website, you can click on the resources page and actually get all this information as well. So I'm just doing high level quick. A very good website is from the Federal Student Aid, and it's they have an entire page dedicated to the military and veterans, and kind of information on military services and family members on what they can do for financial aid or going to colleges. They also have information on the ROTC scholarship, and then they have additional information about Pell Grants, as well as Iraq and Afghan service grants. The next website is Today's Military, and there's an entire page dedicated to paying for college. And on there, veterans are able to get tuition assistance information, find out information about college fund programs that each institute might have. That also has information about pre and post 9/11 GI Bills and what the changes are on all that stuff, along with sharing your benefits with family members when you're going to post-secondary education. So I know I'm going through this really quick just because of time, but all of this is going to be, like I said, posted on our Wisconsin Coalition website, so you can dig into a little bit more and check out all the websites. If you want to change the slide, Hallie, we've got links on the Great Lakes website, and which is also known as Ascendium now. They have entire page dedicated to service member support, and it gives them information on loan forgiveness, repayments. So it's aimed towards veterans that already have their student loans and what they can do with their benefits to help pay for their education, things like that. The Veterans Education Success website is actually really good because it helps walk the veterans through how to pay for school, finding the right school that's for them, that fits them and their benefits. And it also helps with the student loans that are being offered and what to accept, not accept. If the GI Bill doesn't pay for everything, where they can go and what they can do to look for stuff. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs has a ton of information and fact sheets related to the GI Bill and education and kind of what the best path would be for you as a veteran to go to post-secondary education, be it technical, four-year, or trades or any of that stuff as well. So a lot of these links go to websites. The fact sheet actually is a PDF, and it'll kind of high-level stuff on college counseling, on how to figure out where to go and what to do, work study programs, information like that. Next slide, Hallie, is some other great resources that are out there. And I believe Bradley actually mentioned the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, their education call center. Highly recommend going the call center. It's 1-888-442-4551. Oh, that slide must not be on there. But all this will be on, like I said, posted on the Coalition website. We also have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is CFPB. They have a college planning tool that'll help students kind of fill out their information for the FAFSA and benefits and stuff like that. So, and then we also have scholarships for military families, information and links too. So I just want to thank everyone that's on this call right now. And I want to thank our panelists for joining us today. And I'm going to hand it over to Hallie. And I apologize if I were talking too fast, but I know we're over time. So
No, thanks so much, Cheryl. And I'm sorry that I think I did cut off a few of your resources, but we will be able to provide those in a much more accessible format to everyone, as well as this webinar, which was recorded and will be posted on our website, along with all of these slides. And that will happen within 2 business days, but more than likely it will happen today. I personally would love to thank all of the panelists and our presenters today. Carol Trone, thank you so much for your hard work. Joe Rasmussen, Larry Graves, Bradley Burt, and Patty Taylor, as well as Cheryl Rapp. Your contributions to this webinar were unparalleled, and I think that this was a wealth of information for our audience members, both who were able to attend the live event and those who will access this in the days to come. So thank you to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.